The battle for my soul began each night in the quiet. Not a peaceful quiet, but a heavy, suffocating silence that settled in my apartment after the world had gone to sleep. My name is Leo, and for 15 years, I was a prisoner in a war I was losing. The enemy wasn't a person or a substance. It was a compulsion within me, a ritual of self-destruction disguised as relief. Masturbation wasn't about pleasure. It was anesthesia. It was the only way I knew to silence the screaming anxieties of the day, the fear of failure, the gnawing sense that I was not enough. I would come home from my job as a data analyst, a role that felt like feeding a machine that hummed with indifference, and the silence in my apartment would scream at me. The trigger could be anything: a critical comment from my boss, a social interaction that left me feeling awkward, or simply the crushing weight of a lonely Tuesday evening. My mind would create a compelling narrative. You're stressed. You deserve a release. It's just this once. It will help you sleep. It was a lie, and I was its most devoted believer. The descent was always the same. The blue glow of the laptop screen would illuminate my face in the darkness, a portal to a world of fantasy that promised an escape from my own life. My heart would pound not with excitement, but with a dreadful, familiar anticipation. This was the point of no return. I would lose hours, falling down digital rabbit holes that left me feeling hollowed out and less than human. The climax was a fleeting explosion of sensation that vaporized into nothingness, followed immediately by a tidal wave of shame, so profound was a physical weight on my chest. I would lie in the dark afterward, feeling filthy, degraded, and utterly powerless. The promises I made to myself in the morning, never again, lay shattered around me like broken glass. I was a slave to a cycle I could not break, a man divided against himself, and the darker half always won. The turning point came on a night like any other. I had fallen again, deeper than usual, and the ensuing shame was a black hole in my chest. I felt a despair so complete it was like looking into the abyss of my own soul and seeing nothing of value. Lying there, utterly broken, a sound escaped my lips, a raw and ragged whisper into the void. God, if you're there, I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. I'm lost. It wasn't a holy prayer. It was the white flag of a defeated general, a surrender not to a higher power I knew, but to the undeniable truth of my own powerlessness. The next day, I moved through the world like a ghost. My friend Mark, a man whose quiet peace I had always found both admirable and baffling, insisted on meeting for coffee. He saw the defeat on my face. "You look like you wrestled a bear and lost, Leo," he said, his voice calm. When I admitted haltingly that I was trapped in a cycle I couldn't break, he didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he offered a paradigm shift. "You're fighting a spiritual battle with fleshly weapons," he told me. "Willpower is a teaspoon trying to bail out the Titanic." His words resonated with the force of truth. That was exactly what it felt like. My resolve was a tiny, useless tool against the ocean of compulsion inside me. He then introduced a concept that would change everything. Surrender. You surrender to the temptation, he explained. I'm talking about surrendering to the rescue. You're trying to break chains from the inside. You need someone on the outside with a key. He gave me a small worn card with a handwritten verse. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." My weakness, he insisted, was not a barrier to God's help, but the very door through which it would enter. That night, returning to my apartment felt like walking onto a battlefield. The urge was a tangible presence, a gravitational pull toward the screen. The old argument started in my head. But this time, I had a new strategy. I didn't try to fight. I let the weakness wash over me. I stood in the middle of my living room, shaking, and whispered a desperate, specific prayer. "God, I am at the threshold. My strength is gone. It's zero. If you are real, I need you now. Your strength or I fall." I waited for a miracle. None came. No lightning bolt. No choir of angels. The temptation was still there. But then a quiet, gentle thought entered my mind, as clear as a whisper, "Go for a walk." It was so mundane, so simple, that my cynical self almost laughed. But it was a lifeline. With a force of effort that felt both like mine and not mine at all, I turned my back on the laptop, put on my shoes, and walked out the door. The cold night air was a shock to my system. With every step, the compulsive pull loosened its grip. I wasn't fighting the temptation. I was simply, obediently walking away from it. That night, for the first time in over a decade, I went to bed without the shroud of shame. It was a fragile victory, but it was real. It was the first crack of light under the door of my prison. The journey that followed was not a straight line to holiness. It was a messy, daily process of learning to live in a new reality. The temptation didn't vanish. It often intensified, a roaring lion seeking to reclaim its territory. But I was learning. I learned to identify my triggers, loneliness, stress, boredom, and I called them ambush points. My prayer life became a running, gut-honest dialogue. God, I'm feeling anxious. The thought is here. I surrender to you. I began replacing the old ritual with new ones. When the urge came, I would open a journal and write out my fears instead of acting on them. I found solace in the raw, emotional psalms, which echoed my own cries for help. At Mark's suggestion, I joined a small support group. Walking into that room was terrifying, but I found not saints, but broken, hopeful men like me. In sharing our stories, the isolating power of shame was broken and replaced with the solidarity of shared struggle. The divine rescue was not a single event, but a multifaceted process. It was a whisper in the moment of temptation. It was the wisdom of a friend. It was the strength found in community. It was the ancient words of Scripture that became a living anchor. The ultimate test came months later. A major project at work collapsed, and a familiar tsunami of anxiety and self-loathing hit me. The voice of the prisoner was a deafening roar, promising the only comfort it knew. I stood in my dark apartment, shaking, unable to form a coherent prayer. All I could manage was a groan. God, I can't. And in that absolute zero of my strength, rescue came not as a whisper, but as a memory. I remembered the feeling of freedom, the clean feeling of waking up without shame, the peace of a quiet mind. The memory of what grace felt like was more powerful in that moment than the false promise of numbness. I didn't turn on the computer. I picked up the phone and called Mark. He came over, sat with me, and we talked about nothing important until the storm passed. That was divine rescue, made tangible in the form of a friend and a pizza on a Friday night. It has been a year now. I am not perfect. I still have struggles, but I am no longer a slave. I am a free man learning to walk in that freedom. The obsession is gone. The chains are broken. The rescue is not merely from a sexual sin, but from the deeper prison of isolation, shame, and self-hatred. My relationship with God is no longer a transaction where I try to be good enough, but a relationship where I bring my weaknesses and find sufficient grace. My story is that of a broken man who stopped trying to glue his own pieces together and instead allowed the divine artist to create a mosaic from the shards. The cracks are still there, but now they are the places where the light shines through. In the comment section below, you could share your testament of your journey to freedom from masturbation and pornography to help others who are in the struggle and fight for freedom.